All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GeoBridge launch webinar. I'm John Weirs, a data scientist at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and I'm here to talk to you about GeoBridge and what we're doing to help bring geothermal communities together. We'll start with some opening remarks from Elizabeth Metcalf at the Department of Energy, and we'll move into GeoBridge vision, background, and overview. I'll talk a little bit about the case study, and then we'll open it up to questions and answers. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you may be on mute.
Okay, thank you for unmuting me. And thank you, John. I'm pleased to represent GTO today and join NREL in sharing this important tool. And I thank everyone for taking the time to attend this webinar today. So technology development and R&D are critical parts of GTO's work, the Geothermal Technologies Office's work. But so is sharing resources that help get the word out about those advances and connect people to the benefits and opportunities of geothermal energy. We know from our GeoVision analysis that one of the primary challenges geothermal faces is that it isn't as well known as other forms of energy, and that resources about geothermal technologies and their uses and benefits aren't always readily available or easy to find. Geothermal can be used in so many ways nationwide, and expanding its use is a collaborative effort that requires connections among researchers, industry, academia, communities, investors, and others. So we took our findings about the need for better and more accessible information and leveraged them into our multi-year program plan, GTO's multi-year program plan, which outlines steps that GTO can take to increase awareness and understanding about geothermal energy and to help build the geothermal community. And we're thrilled to support GeoBridge as part of that work. And as you'll see today, GeoBridge is a one-stop shop that provides easy, organized access to available geothermal knowledge and information to build awareness and technical understanding, share job opportunities, and foster a stronger geothermal community. And through GeoBridge, we're helping to ensure that you, the geothermal community, can get the information that you need when you need it to help leverage geothermal energy in more places nationwide. And with that, I'll turn it over to NREL and John so we can see just how much GeoBridge can do. Thank you again for all being here, and look forward to seeing you use this tool.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Appreciate it. That was a great summary of GeoBridge. So what is GeoBridge? As Elizabeth said, it's one of our efforts to improve diversity in geothermal and bring different communities together. We're trying to bridge the gaps between the established geothermal community and those that are interested in joining the geothermal sector. Geothermal has been in the news lately, and there's a lot of traction. There's new investments happening in the United States, large projects underway, and there are a lot of interested parties across the board. And so we're trying to help bridge the gap between the established geothermal industry that's been around since well, for many decades, for over 50 years, and those that are trying to break into this space. So emerging startups, isolated communities, the next generation of geothermal workforce, and more. So first, a little background. Why do we need GeoBridge? What's the real issue here? And there we go. And so this all started with really a discovery or a notice of a trend in support requests coming into some of our other tools. So one of the other projects I manage at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory is DOE's Geothermal Data Repository, or the GDR. And on the GDR, we have a help link, and that help email would regularly receive questions that are about data and data sets, but it would also regularly receive questions that were not about data. Questions like which universities or degree programs are offered in geothermal energy, or are there any geothermal industry conferences? If so, which one should I go to? These are questions from people that were trying to essentially get more familiar with the geothermal community and break into it. We could get questions like, what resources are available for city planners who are considering geothermal energy? What incentive programs have been proven to work and not work? And these are questions that are a little beyond the normal wheelhouse of the geothermal data repository. And the more we thought about it, the more we realized that they were indicative of a larger gap in information that was out there. And so let's take a moment to appreciate that information seeker's journey, because no one just starts their journey seeking information by writing me an email. Most likely, these people all started by typing their questions into a search engine, and maybe even visited the first few sites that popped up. Maybe even revisited those search results and checked page 2. And eventually they found the GDR and searched within the GDR. And then eventually they found the GDR help link, which is located in the footer at the bottom of the GDR. Opened an email client, typed their questions in to email a stranger, and then waited for a response. That is hardly the way people seek out information in this day and age. It's a very ineffective way of finding answers to questions. We want to type our questions into a search engine and get immediate results. So that was an indicator to us that the answers to these types of questions weren't readily available on the internet, or they at least weren't easily discoverable. And so we set out trying to make the answers to these types of questions more easily discoverable and searchable across the internet. And so that's the background behind the GeoBridge. But we weren't totally sure that we wanted that what we were experiencing wasn't just a fluke or just an artifact of the GDR NREL. So the first thing we did is we reached out to the geothermal community. We assembled an advisory group, and we tried to get representation across the geothermal community. So our advisory group consists of industry professionals, utility operators, community organizers, universities, and academia. We have event organizers. We have representation from the Women in Geothermal or WING network. We have representation from international associations, ground source heat pump associations, direct use, energy production, state energy offices, national laboratories, and then of course the Department of Energy. And so we talked to these people and we realized that this is a problem, that there are gaps in information available. And we set out trying to identify those gaps. We targeted communities with entrepreneurs, realizing we've gotten a lot of emails from entrepreneurs looking to introduce their technology to the geothermal space. We got a lot of emails from students and professionals trying to build careers or make contacts in the geothermal energy industry. And in talking to our advisory group, we realized that there are gaps for homeowners, businesses interested in learning how heat pumps can save them money. In our research, we realized that a substantial portion of the internet are finding answers to questions on geothermal heat pumps from sources like Reddit, social media, rather than heat pump manufacturers or Department of Energy sources. And so we want to help direct these types of inquiries towards those expert resources rather than relying on social media for answers. We're trying to give verified, vetted information a chance to compete in the internet space and make its way into the hands of those information seekers. Our advisory group also pointed out additional gaps for us as we went through these discussions and discovery sessions, noting that policymakers, utilities are all looking for guidance into geothermal community best practices, and that regulators are looking for assistance in best practices as well for approving and monitoring geothermal systems. Regulations, especially for direct use geothermal, vary from state to state. Some of them are more modern than others, and trying to identify the nuances of regulations in one state versus another can be very difficult for both homeowners interested in geothermal ground source heat pumps and also for installers looking into breaking into a new market and taking their operations national. So how do we bridge these gaps? Well, what we did is we took that list of stakeholders and we broke it down into several categories. I'll go into more details here in a moment on the following slides. And then we broke those categories into 2 phases. And so we wanted to get this information out there. And so we prioritized some critical information and basic geothermal, STEM, heat pumps working in geothermal. And then we've identified additional information for a phase 2 release, which we're currently working on launching on additional content on the site. The phase 1 is live. You can go to GeoBridge right now. The URL is right here, and check it out. Or there's a QR code at the end of this. You can scan with your phone and go check it out. Strongly encourage you to do so. Please have a look. We're very interested to know what you think. We're still adding stuff. That's the whole point of phase 2. We did a soft launch at GRC at the end of October. We got a lot of wonderful feedback that's helping inform the following phase. And that's part of the design of breaking this into 2 phases. We really want this to be a tool by the community for the community. And so we want that community feedback so that we can add community suggested items and help drive this to make it an effective tool for all of us. So how did we arrive at these categories? Well, what we did is, if I jump back a second, we took these target communities and these individual requests for information that had come in, not just to NREL, but to a lot of the stakeholders that we spoke with. And we took their needs and tried to lump their needs into similar bins. We really wanted to make the content on GeoBridge driven by user needs. And so if you can imagine, students looking for contacts or potential job opportunities in the geothermal industry have similar needs as an entrepreneur looking to break into the geothermal industry, or somebody who has an existing geothermal adjacent technology and they're trying to bring it to a market and expand into the geothermal energy market. At the end of the day, they both want to get connected. They want to find the right connections. They want to learn more about the industry needs. And so this is where these topics are coming from the individual user needs. And there's a lot of overlap between different needs and different target communities that we identified and simplified into this format. And so we've got basic geothermal, answering questions like, how does it work? Where is it found? How can we use it? How can geothermal energy save me money? We've got opportunities to get connected, joining interest groups, joining trade associations, going to events, meeting people, sharing research, publishing. Where's a good place to publish your geothermal research? These are questions that we're helping drive answers to. Events calendars, working in geothermal, employers, job boards. How do we find a job in geothermal energy? Heat pumps, trying to direct people towards reputable sources for information on ground loop installation types, federal, state, and local tax incentives, tips for properly sizing a ground source heat pump system and getting a competitive quote. And then, of course, many STEM resources. We get a lot of questions about how do we incorporate geothermal energy in schools? How do we build outside the classroom and hands-on activities or support undergraduate and graduate programs, et cetera. And then coming up soon in early 2025, we'll have specific technical guidance on advanced geothermal and the future of geothermal. And 2 of these topics are really centered around what's happening next in geothermal. We're really trying to help answer some of the questions driven by geothermal experts, entrepreneurs looking to break into geothermal. They're going to be interested in what are the problems that the industry itself is still trying to solve. How do we drill deeper, hotter? What technological advancements are needed for the United States to reach the next generation of EGS, or enhanced geothermal systems? And so this is diving down into the weeds a little bit more on advanced geothermal topics and helping point people not familiar with the geothermal industry to these resources. And I want to specifically emphasize that we're pointing to resources. We're avoiding duplication of effort. GeoBridge isn't here to spout a bunch of stuff that's been spouted before. We're trying to be complementary to the geothermal community and not duplicative. When there is existing information on the internet, we direct people to that information. We take advantage of the powerful search engine optimization that's already been built into OpenAI. GeoBridge lives in a semantic wiki on the OpenAI platform, as you've seen if you've already been there, or you'll see shortly, hopefully. And so we help drive traffic to these existing sites. And at the end of the day, we're just creating multiple pathways to information to make that information easier to find. The search engine optimization efforts we've done make it easier for search engines to find these things, elevate these answers higher in search results, so that information seekers aren't going to page 2 of a search, or worse, showing up at the GDR and emailing me. And so we're trying to act as a guide for this difficult to find information. And we're also working with the organizations that are publishing this information to improve the discoverability of that information, to help them advertise things that may be behind a user wall or behind a paywall, and otherwise invisible to search engines, or people that don't already have a membership don't know that that information is there. So we can act as a signpost in a sort of a way to help drive people to this information. But one of the other things GeoBridge is doing is it's taking multiple layers of information that is often siloed in areas of expertise. So you might have somebody who's an expert in geothermal policy or geothermal incentives, and somebody else who's an expert in sizing a ground source heat pump installation. And to get them talking together takes some coordination for sure. And that is necessary to answer a lot of real world questions out there. So one of the things we're doing is helping answer real world questions. And so here's a fantastic case study of an actual question we received while we were building out phase 1 of GeoBridge. We received this via email at NREL and the Department of Energy. This particular person was a member of a historical preservation society interested in restoring a historic early 1900s movie theater. And they're considering a closed loop ground geothermal heat pump. And they're asking, are there any organizations, universities, private groups out there that might be willing to help us in the way of grants, research, et cetera, to get this project rolling? Fantastic example of a real life question, a real life project that touches on a lot of different areas of expertise. And so as you can imagine, this email was forwarded to a lot of different experts. And eventually, and each contributing a piece, and eventually it was forwarded to the GeoBridge team, who had already organized a lot of relevant information as part of our content development organization process. And we were able to respond with heat pump sizing and pricing, federal, state, and utility incentives programs, DOE and lab-based technical assistance programs. There's a lot of opportunities out there to apply for researcher time, grants, partnerships with labs, for projects like this. We were also able to respond with relevant organizations and communities so they could talk to other people who've done something similar. And then of course, tools, databases, and services, and all the online tools that can help size a system like this. And so it was a really good example of how pulling information together from these other silos of expertise into a cohesive thing can really help inform an answer. And one of the experts involved in our email chain was very impressed and said this: the GeoBridge project seems like it's going to be useful for everyone, including me. So it's really, we're glad to have that positive feedback early on. And I think it ties directly into our mission of bridging gaps. So at the end of the day, GeoBridge is trying to bring different geothermal communities together. Our goal is to be a discoverable, publicly accessible, searchable portal. We're trying to facilitate easier access to geothermal knowledge and information. We're working to expand and diversify the pool of geothermal stakeholders. We want to bring in those interested university students. We want to bring in that next generation of geothermal workforce. We want to bring in the entrepreneurs out there that are researching, pipe flow monitoring technologies, harder, deeper drilling technologies, and other technologies that are very relevant to the geothermal industry. And we want to expand the pool of people that are excited about geothermal to help build a stronger geothermal community for us and for everyone. And with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. I've got 2 QR codes here. I definitely encourage you to go check out GeoBridge right now. And after you've had some time to look at it, please feel free to check out our feedback survey and let us know what we're missing. As I mentioned, we've got some content slated for phase 2, and we've already received a ton of feedback from the community. And so the purpose of this webinar is to open it up to you all, expand beyond our circle of influence in our regular community to get feedback from as many people as we can, try and make this a valuable tool. Plans for the future already include additional content on the future of geothermal, on thermal energy networks and community-based geothermal projects. And we have a lot more stuff planned in state and local policy and regulation space. But I'll look forward to answering your questions and hearing your thoughts. Thank you very much.
And I'm just going to jump in. I know that we have a chat and a Q&A going, but if we could direct our questions to the Q&A so we can make sure that we're answering everything, that would be, I think, very helpful. John, we did have a question in the chat that I just want to address right now, because I think a lot of people probably have this question. I know we're going to share the recording with everyone, or the recording will be available after the webinar. Will we be able to share the slides as well?
Yes, we can share these slides as well.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, and it looks like we have a few questions in the Q&A, which I can read off, and then John and team, if you want to respond to that, we can start going through them. The first question we have is about ATES, but I believe that was answered in the chat that that's coming in the future in 2025. Anything that we want to add about that before kind of marking that one as complete?
I think that's been answered. Please let me know if it has not. I'd be happy to extrapolate more.
Okay, great. And then our next question is there a website where we can find links to resources like sizing and pricing technical support you mentioned for someone's theater project?
Yeah, well, we're hoping that GeoBridge is the site that points you to what you need. So please check it out on GeoBridge. And as you'll see, there are quite a few different sites based off various manufacturers that are interested in promoting different sizing and pricing models. It varies by location, climate, and state. So there's a lot of nuance to it, but we're hoping to be the starting point on that journey as you find those resources.
Hey, and then our next question is, are there any FOAs from DOE? I think that's possibly building on the previous question.
Yeah, so speaking from the GeoBridge perspective, we will have links to common sites to search for funding opportunities from the Department of Energy and other sites that could be states and local governments releasing their own opportunities as well. So we will be pointing towards known sources of funding opportunities.
Okay, and then our next question is, Sane Energy Project in NYC is working on thermal energy networks. What kinds of resources are you planning to add, and how can we help?
Thanks for that question. I appreciate that. We're still developing that content and building out what we're going to have in there. There's been a lot of work the Department of Energy has done on community geothermal and thermal energy networks, and we'll be pulling from those sources. We'll be linking to data and publications that exist already on these subjects, and also addressing commonly asked questions and user needs. And so as we're figuring that out, we may reach out to you with additional questions. One way that you could help would be to keep an eye on GeoBridge. When that content gets integrated into our site plan, please give us your feedback. Let us know if there's anything that you think we're missing or anything we can do to better serve the community there.
Awesome. Okay, and then our next question is, please say more about policy and regulation. Are you covering both deep hot resource and shallow geothermal networks? Will you cover some of the state laws regarding thermal energy networks, e.g. MA and NY rules aimed at allowing gas utilities to develop thermal utility service?
Yes, absolutely. So GeoBridge is covering both energy producing deep networks as well as direct use and shallow networks. We've identified gaps in both of those areas, and we'll be covering that and introducing content for both of those topics for sure. It's as the question asker alluded to, there are a lot of discrepancies between states, and that's something we hope to point to differences and help address. I don't know how much detail we'll go into in individual state policies, but our goal is to at least arm our information seekers with the tools they need to find the answers for their states. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, an interesting example is there are some states out there where it's very easy to get a geothermal heat pump for your home. There are other states where the policies and regulations governing those heat pumps are still ruled by old regulations written for wells, and so water wells specifically. And so in those particular states, you cannot put the well bore directly underneath your home. It has to be at least 100 yards away from your home, and then that creates significant challenges to people in dense urban areas who are looking to install ground source heat pumps. And so we're not only working with residential homeowners on navigating those complex environments for regulation, but we're also working with state and local policymakers on helping them update their policies to make them more geothermal energy friendly and more modern. And so that's a good example of how we're working with different communities and trying to bring those communities together to build a better future for geothermal energy, both shallow and deep.
Great, thank you. And then our next question is, if I would like to provide some information that is not yet in GeoBridge, how can I provide it to the GeoBridge team?
Thanks for that. Great question. So there are several different ways you can do that. Probably the easiest way is feel free to email me directly. I'll get it to the team. You can scan this QR code for the feedback, and that's exactly what that feedback form is asking. We're looking for what did we miss? What gaps are still there that we need to help fill? What content is needed to help drive this community forward? And you can also, at the bottom of any page on GeoBridge, there's a contact us link and also a feedback button there too. So if you're on the site looking at stuff and you think of something while you're there, just scroll to the bottom, click contact us to open an email, or click feedback to send us some feedback within the app itself. Great questions, thank you.
Awesome. We do have a few questions in the chat as well, so I'm going to turn to those right now. And as a reminder, if you all can send your questions in the Q&A, it'll just make sure that I don't miss anything. Okay, so our next question is, do you plan to connect or link with world geothermal communities as well?
I assume this is asking about international communities. We are already connected to several international communities, and we do intend to continue to expand our international presence. Much of what we do is focused domestically in the US because we are Department of Energy funded, and that's the easy information for us to round up, but we have no plans of stopping there. So we're trying to pull in relevant information from around the world.
Hey, and our next question is there currently or planned a place where market data sales is available, specifically on a state-by-state basis?
We don't have plans to have a marketplace or to have market data or sales available. Some of that stuff at a higher level is available through other NREL analysis tools or in DOE's GeoVision report. And GeoBridge will point to some of these resources, but GeoBridge itself will not be displaying detailed market data. But we will point to it where available.
Great. Okay, our next question is, will GeoBridge also address utility scale potential? Is geothermal appropriate for major energy production, particularly for remote locations?
Two questions there that I'd be happy to answer. Yes, we're absolutely addressing that. Again, these are well analyzed questions that the Department of Energy and many national labs, not just NREL, but many of the national labs within the United States have done wonderful analysis projects on that. GeoBridge will absolutely point to the results of those. There are data on these topics in the geothermal data repository, and GeoBridge will help point to those as well. And then since I have the opportunity, I get to answer the fun question, is geothermal appropriate for major energy production? Yes, absolutely, particularly in remote locations. Is it the cheapest form of energy production? It depends on the location, honestly. In most cases, no. But what geothermal energy does have are several advantages. It's one of the very few always on renewable energy sources. So it doesn't matter if it's sunny or windy or rainy. It doesn't matter if it's night or day. It doesn't matter if it's summer or winter. The earth is always warm. Geothermal energy is always on. And so it can be a reliable baseload technology. The reservoirs themselves can be tapped for dispatchable energy. And so there's a lot of potential there, especially in terms of grid resilience and energy security. Geothermal energy, I think a lot of people are starting to realize, is an exciting option, and something we're very interested in exploring for our nation's energy future.
Thank you. Our next question is, what are the benefits of creating an account on GeoBridge?
All the information on GeoBridge is free and free for anonymous use. We're trying to lower the barrier for information, so no account is necessary. GeoBridge is hosted on OpenAI, and so creating an account on OpenAI ties you into all the open energy information tools, including the GDR, the other OpenAI wikis. And creating an account on GeoBridge would allow you to contribute content. So it is a public wiki. Another way to contribute content, which is one of our questions earlier, is to create an account and edit it, just like Wikipedia. Our team does monitor these pages, and we do curate the content, but we also accept suggestions and improvements. So if they're a great example of that, a very easy example is we were mentioning a geothermal organization that's a decent one to join, and they just came out with a new logo. So they're able to log in and update their logo across our site by themselves. And that was a great way to help keep information relevant to you and your areas of expertise up to date on GeoBridge. We have a team of people working on that as well. But like I said, by the community for the community. So creating an account lets you be an active participant in GeoBridge's development.
Awesome. Okay, and then our next question is, will the recent election have an impact on GeoBridge or its effectiveness across the DOE, for example, through LPO-supported projects? And then thank you for hosting.
Good question. No one can predict the future, but I don't foresee the change in administration having a measurable impact on GeoBridge. We're just launching this tool, and so I think once we get phase 2 complete, our plan is to move into a measure and improve phase where we're going to be looking at our own analytics to make sure that what we've done is actually bridging the gaps we wanted to bridge, and working with the community to get more feedback and make sure we're addressing the needs and collecting metrics on our success. Are we actually helping make this information more available? What are the referrals look like? What do the analytics look like? And then working to improve GeoBridge based off the metrics we've discovered. So the future of GeoBridge is much more driven by community feedback. These questions you're asking now and statements we're getting from the community, the feedback and the things, than it will be from future elections. I think what we're doing with GeoBridge speaks to both sides of the aisle. We're helping to expand the network of geothermal experts. We're bridging gaps between other industries like oil and gas, like I was saying earlier, pipeline flow maintenance and device technologies. And so we're bringing multiple industries together to explore geothermal energy solutions. And from what I've seen, geothermal, and this is just my opinion and mine alone, but geothermal energy, I think, has a large role to play in the future of our nation's energy security. regardless of which administration's in place.
Great, thank you. So our next question is, which section or tab of GeoBridge contains resources needed to start evaluation for geothermal at our site, and then particularly technical assistance?
That's a great question. So technical assistance, let me go back to our architecture slide really quick. So you're going to find this stuff sprinkled throughout. But what we're trying to do, as I mentioned with that case study too, is bring these together into narratives. And so one of the things we'll be doing in phase 2 is putting more of these types of use cases into our site. So as you're looking to put a new site into place and build out your own geothermal solution, you're going to be interested in permitting and regulation. There are going to be relevant tools that will be of use to you. You may even be interested in getting connected towards some geothermal experts or getting technical assistance from national labs, et cetera. And so one of the things that's not on here are really these sort of case study callouts that are going to be cross-cutting across sectors. And so we'll be able to hopefully have a very easily discovered place there that's, I'm interested in building out my own heat pump solution, my own community geothermal project, or restoring my own movie theater, whatever the example may be. And you'll be able to find a nice curated list of resources for you there. Good question. Thanks so much.
Okay, and I think we might be all caught up. Just checking the chat to see if there's anything we missed, but it looks like.
That's great. I'll add a little bit more to my last answer. I forgot I had this screenshot. So these are kind of our visual callouts too. We have our basic navigation across the top that is organized into those columns I was showing on the previous slide. But these are where we'll be highlighting specific collections of information as well. So this is what you'll be on the lookout for, call out boxes like this that say, I'm starting a community geothermal project, and then there'll be like find resources or something that will take you to a specific page that will help link to all the relevant resources. So it seems a little redundant to have these different pathways like basic geothermal and geothermal 101, but that goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where we're trying to create multiple pathways to information. The more ways we have to arrive at information, the more likely it is that somebody who's seeking up says, oh, this is what I was interested in, or the search engine they're typing their question into can map to that particular pathway and help them find the information even faster. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions in chat or the Q&A, so thank you very much. We very much are interested in your feedback. I'll go back to that Q&R code. Check out GeoBridge with the one on the left. Send us your feedback with the one on the right, or scroll to the bottom of any GeoBridge page to send us your feedback directly. Thank you all for the kind words in the chat. I appreciate it. We're very excited about this project, and so far the feedback's been fairly positive. But we know we still have some work to do. That's why we're rolling it out in phases. So we look forward to collecting some feedback from you all and helping to make this tool even better.